I got a call from a friend that Dwayne had taken his own life. And he ended up taking his life not long after we had that conversation that night. And mate, the impact that had on my life right then, it literally changed everything about my life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Who Can Relate. Happy Tuesday to you. If you guys don't know by now, I am very strategic with who I bring on the show. I really try to do a good background check to make sure they're able to provide value and to help out in any kind of way. And the guest that I have on today is going to do that and more. Like I feel like this is going to be one of those episodes where it's going to help out more people than I think we can ever imagine, and I'm just really excited. So let me give you guys Mr. Sam Webb's bio. So Sam's the co-founder of LIVIN and the host of It Ain't Weak to Speak podcast. Such a great name. He's well known in Australia for his appearances on multiple TV shows and work in the mental health space. He started charities, raised awareness on national TV, and given TED Talks, which if you guys stick around for the bonus content, I will make sure it's included, the whole speech. He was one of the subject leaders in the feature film documentary Suicide, The Ripple Effect, which has won multiple awards in the US. He's a co-author of Transformation, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. He's an actor. You're going to hear the Australian accent. He's got a beautiful girlfriend, which is how we met. We'll unpack it all. Mr. Sam Webb, welcome to Who Can Relate, man.
Mate, thanks so much for having me on the show with you, man. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the work that you're doing. And thanks for the warm welcome, too, by the way. You talked me up a little bit there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just read your accolades, man.
Yeah, except for my thick Australian accent. Hopefully, guys, you can understand what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. And anyone driving or doing laundry or running right now is like, oh, okay, I'll tune in for this, right? So that's the on paper background, right? I don't know if you want to add anything else as far as anything I didn't mention, or LIVIN, which is the beautiful foundation you and your partner, right? You guys started together. Explain what LIVIN is a little bit more. Yeah.
So and mate, my life changed just before LIVIN started, and I'll unpack it all. I guess. Yeah. As a young kid, growing up playing sports and. As a male, a man's man, so to speak, I thought I had the answers to a lot of things, and being, in circles of a lot of friends and males, we all used to knock around with each other and, pick on each other, mucking around, you know what mucking around is here in America, same stuff. And it was 2012 when my life sort of started to spiral out of control for myself mentally. I started dealing with my own mental health challenges, and at the time I lived in America. This was, almost 10 years ago. I lived in the Midwest. I lived in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, wow. That's the Midwest, at the heart of the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. And I was in the middle of nowhere, and I'm normally meant to be on a beach. That's where I was born, pretty much on the beach. And anyway, it was a good experience in my life, but mentally I was struggling and I was spiraling out of control. And in a nutshell, because that story could probably go on its own little tangent. I don't want to lose people while I'm trying to explain what LIVIN's all about.
No worries.
I started dealing with my own mental illnesses, anxiety, depression. I hid the pain really well, coming off 5 years of antidepressants for my anxiety, and I drank my problems away. I ran away from my problems. When I say ran away from them, I was literally running 15 to 20 kilometers, which is around 10 to 14 miles every day.
Wow.
And I was doing that to try and bring my mind to homeostasis, so to speak, which is like a level. Yeah. And that was the only thing that would sort of make me feel good other than drinking. And I reunited with a good friend of mine. His name was Dwayne Lally. Yeah. And Dwayne and I grew up together. And where the mateship stuff comes into it here is we played football together. We played sports. Very competitive, extremely competitive. And from the outside looking in, Dwayne had it all. Life of the party. He represented Australia at the Commonwealth Games at 16 years of age for boxing. Wow. Extremely talented. Wow. Great family. Life was very well put together on the outside.
Sure.
Great partner. Yeah. And you know those friends, Justin, when you don't have to see them or speak to them every week, but you guys are still tight.
Of course.
Dwayne and I were like that.
Yeah.
And we had our differences at times, but I mean, for the most of the part, we reunited in 2013, and this is the year I was spiraling. And Dwayne opened up to me that year, saying how much he was struggling. His mental health challenges were sort of getting the better of him, but he did tell us all, you know, that they weren't as bad as, you know, they probably really were. Anyway, a long story short, because I'm still trying to answer your question, but
no worries.
I'm just giving you a bit of background here because it needs the background, needs the understanding. I ended up at a party on September 14th of 2013.
Got it.
With Dwayne.
Got it.
He invited me around to his house that night. And we were meant to go on a double date. He was trying to set me up with a friend of his missus, his girlfriend at the time.
Okay. And
those plans are quickly thrown out the window. I ended up at his place. He goes, bring some beers. We're going to go mad. We're going to the top. And the top was a place Dwayne and I always used to talk about. The top is this imaginary place in life. We're going to the top. Like literally, we're going to be successful. We're going to have a hell time. No one can stop us. We're unstoppable. Anyway, we ended up at his house party. At a barbecue, went into a party. And I remember very, very clearly, vividly, like it was yesterday, Dwayne going, Webb, my surname Webb, come into my room. And I'm like, yeah, no worries, man. What's up? Shut the door behind me. And that next conversation changed my life. And Dwayne opened up to me about everything from how severe his mental illness had been, where he was at right now in his life. And he told me that he'd struggled with bipolar and depression for a number of years, but I know Dwayne hid the pain really well. He hid the pain extremely well, like an actor.
Wow. Because
he was worried about what people would have thought. The repercussions of that self-shame and the stigma that society put on mental health, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And your own stigma that you put on mental health because people think it's weak and it's not cool to talk about.
Sure.
But you know what? Dwayne told me that night, he goes, Webb, I've tried to take my life twice before.
Wow.
And I just didn't see that coming. I was so thrown off guard, man. I had no idea how to even react to a statement like that.
Right.
Except Dwayne quickly said, you know what, man, I would never do it again. I would never put my family through it. I love he was so close with his family. And as a mate in a room, and we'd had a couple of drinks, and you know, drugs were involved at the party and whatnot. And at the end of the day, I thought I listened as best as I possibly could have, man. I thought I said everything I possibly could have said.
Yeah.
As a guy does, you probably try and problem solve a lot. Yeah. And I thought, you know, your mates are always here. I'll be here if you ever need anything. Yeah. Pick up the phone. Don't ever be afraid to and ask for help from me. And I shared with him about my journey with mental illness and my family's, you know, and we had a lot of common denominators ourselves.
Sure.
And he looked at me and goes, I'm fine. His last two words were to me that night was, I'm fine. He looked at me in the eyes before that and was telling me how bright and promising his future was. And he had all these great plans to you know, buy a home and all this sort of great stuff. And the last two words, after I'd tried and reassured him everything, life was great from this moment onwards, man, we're great, we're a team, we're here for each other, no matter how good or bad it gets, we're going to the top. Yeah. That's exactly what we were saying. We're going to the top. And last two words were, I'm fine. We went back to the party outside of his room, and it was like nothing happened. And I remember momentarily later, Dwayne had left the party after an altercation.
You saw him leave? Or?
No, I didn't see him leave. Okay. And I was sitting at the front door, and I remember sitting on the front couch looking back because I would have saw anyone leave, and especially after that conversation. It got dark, and there was emotions and everything else. And I never saw Dwayne leave the party, man. He got into an argument that night, and basically after a series of conversations, I messaged him. I was trying to call him, no answers, nothing. It was like radio silence. I drove halfway around the Gold Coast that night looking for him when I probably shouldn't have been driving. Nowhere to be seen, man. It was just like this eerie feeling in the early hours of the 15th, September 15. We're now in the Sunday morning. Yeah. Next day, man, I woke up. I remember very vividly. We went to watch the Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo Alvarez fight down at the local bar, and Dwayne wasn't there, and mate, he wasn't writing back. There's still no responses. His face was plastered on Facebook for people to find out where he was. No one could see it. No one knew where he was.
Wow.
And mate, it was about 5 o'clock that day. I got the call that I got a call from a friend that Dwayne had taken his own life. And he ended up taking his life not long after we had that conversation that night. And mate, the impact that had on my life right then, it literally changed everything about my life. Like, my life changed.
Sure.
And I remember getting in the car that night and going straight to the hospital, because I didn't believe it. I believed it, but I didn't believe it, and I had to see it. And the moment they pulled those curtains back, and this can get graphic, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with this, but the moment they pulled those curtains back, and I saw Dwayne not in living form, wearing the same gear that he was in the night before when I was just partying with him, it changed everything. It put my life into perspective, my own struggles into perspective.
Sure.
And that's when LIVIN was born. And LIVIN was born from Dwayne's passing. Dwayne used to always say, "We're living, man, we're living." And the arrow in the LIVIN, if we're going to get real specific, is him and I saying, we're going to the top. And we're going to the top is a very special place in my heart, and so is LIVIN. And, you know, we started living in Dwayne's honour so that we could break the stigma around mental illness, so that we could save more lives and stop other young people, especially men, going through the same thing that Dwayne went through. And it changes everyone's lives. His family will never be the same again. His sister will never be the same again. His mum, dad, their auntie, uncle, grandparents, friends, no one will ever be the same again. And that's one life.
Right.
So it's it was a life-changing moment for a lot of us. And that's when LIVIN started.
I appreciate you sharing that. I gotta collect myself a little bit here. That's so powerful. It's so deep. It's heartbreaking. All the emotions. I watched your TEDx talk last night, and I heard you basically tell the same story. Listen to your podcast. I've heard the story a couple times, but it's hitting different right now. Maybe it's because I'm just in person with you and in your presence, and I can see your hat. I can see the way the eye is, and yeah, man. I really appreciate you sharing that, and for everyone listening and watching. Obviously, we're going to be talking about some stuff that I've never covered on Who Can Relate, and it's because I don't have experience in it. I don't have anything to act like I can know what I'm talking about. So I've always been very gentle around it. And when Nadia, your girlfriend, introduced us, and I really started to do my research on you, I was like, wow, like Sam's the guy, to bring on to have this conversation. I have people close to me in my life who suffer from depression, who have threatened to take their own life with suicide. And you mentioned problem solving, especially as a man, and I am all about problem solving. And I'm gonna read a quote I got from your TEDx. You said, "We're always trying to problem solve, but sometimes people just need us to listen." You said your psychologist buddy, gave you this beautiful quote, which is, "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak, because oftentimes when you do, people will tell you what they want." So I wanted just to preface everybody, give the disclaimer. If this is too heavy to listen to or watch, I totally understand. But the sole reason why Sam is here on the show is to try to help anyone if you're going through it, to just reach out for some help and to reach out to people. So and I will do a lot of listening today, man. So it's a beautiful way of living your life now, through Dwayne, in a sense, and just such an honorable thing to do, and obviously I know he's proud, man, and his family, I can only imagine. So it's beautiful what you do. I really want to get into today maybe some of the stigmas behind, depression, possible suicide, mental health as much as we can. Both Sam and I are not experts, but we're, as you say, we're students of life. Mm-hmm. We are experts at our own experiences. however, as well. So let's start off with, as you title it, Smiling Depression, Masking Our Emotions. You know, you said Dwayne's last 2 words were, I'm fine. And I definitely can relate to not being fine, not being okay when someone asks me, but being either too scared to be vulnerable and say, you know, it's interesting you ask, man, I'm actually not okay. You know, like having a conversation with my friend and you know, you said Dwayne brought you in, you know, closed the door and sat you down and said, hey, this is what I'm going through. So I want to unpack that a little bit if you can, you know, just the smiling and the whole I'm fine movement.
Yeah, I think a big part, and made a great question, and pardon me to reiterate, we're both student of lives, and I'm not a mental health expert by any means.
Sure.
I've just lived through my own experiences, and you know, we'll get some great mentors in my life, especially in this space, and never take away your own experiences in this field, because I think lived experiences are very powerful, and I feel like there is a space for them in the mental health conversation, and a very big time and very big space. So don't ever forget that for everyone listening who might have their own journey. Speak up when you feel like you can. I think smiling depression, mate, and the I'm fine stuff is something that we've just learnt second nature as human beings, especially men. We're grown up from the days of the hunters and gatherers, and we're told to suck it up, harden up. You'll be right, mate. Don't cry. Why are you crying? And there's always trying to justify our emotions in a way that is perceived as strong or manly, and that can only get you so far. And they're the times in the old days, maybe when my dad grew up, or you know, our families grew up. Times have changed. Okay, modern day masculinity is very different. And we need to start changing these conversations that we're having. And the only way to do that is by men like yourself, Justin, that are putting together great you know, shows or podcasts, and having a movement and having honest conversations. Because it has to start somewhere. And for us to make a difference, to make a dent in this pie, so to speak, we have to take initiative. Let's not wait for anyone else to do it. Let's do it ourselves. And I think the smiling depression stuff, there's a range of reasons why people might do it. I'm talking from my own experiences. For me, it was a couple of reasons. One, self-stigma. It was a stigma I put on myself about asking for help and what people would think. And the other part of it was, what would they say? Would they make my problems worse? Would they know even how to take it? And would they alienate me? So these are all self-stigmas, which keep a lot of people quiet, because there's still a lack of understanding around mental health in this conversation, which is why LIVIN started. Because when I grew up, I never had people coming into my school or coming into my workplace and talking to me about really basic mental health training. And when I say mental health training, I'm talking about signs and symptoms, what to look out for in someone that might be struggling, what you wouldn't say to someone who might be going through a hard time. Okay, how can you point someone in the right direction to get professional support? I didn't know any of this. No one ever taught it to me. No one ever told me about it. My family didn't. I had to go through real life experiences, losing people to suicide, having my own mental health challenges to actually understand and unpack that. So the smiling depression, there's a big part of that, I believe, comes from just a lack of understanding, lack of education, and no one knows anything else, so they'll just suck it up and just live with it, expecting the problem to go away if they just silence it. But in all honesty, that problem only gets worse.
And it's like you said earlier, you were running from your problems, physically trying to escape the problems. You know, if people lean on drugs or alcohol to try to drink them away or just numb them away, and you can't run from them. And like you said, it will get worse. For me, there were so many problems that I tried to either shove under the rug or literally run away from as well, only to resurface time and time again. And as I got older, they grew. You know, they became deeper, they became bigger, and at one point I felt like they became insurmountable to actually heal from or just grow from. You know, but again, through reaching out to friends, family, therapists, you know, for me, everyone knows who can relate. I'm such an advocate of therapy, and so, but it was for me more so just, I don't want to say giving up, and I don't want that to be taken insensitively. When I say like I just kind of gave up, I gave up with trying to find the solution on my own. I was like, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions, and you know what? It's time to delegate. It's time to ask for help, and that takes a lot of vulnerability, as we just talked about. Brene Brown, the author, who I'm such a fan of, she says, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of bravery.
It really is. And I think it's I think vulnerability, like to be vulnerable and to talk to people about being vulnerable, you've almost got to be vulnerable yourself.
100%.
Because like I know for a fact that in order for me, if I never was vulnerable, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm a pretty emotional type of guy. And that's probably, my mum's got a big part to do that in the way I looked up to her growing up and whatnot. But being vulnerable is a tough way to be because, again, you're not taught it. Yeah. You're not taught to deal with that stuff. You're not taught to be honest and open, especially, again, as a man, if we're talking about males here in particular. We're told to suck it up, just to suppress it, be the problem solvers, be the ones with all the answers, to carry everyone on our back to a point where we suffer at the expense of everybody else. We're never taught self-care is number one care. We're never taught about recovery and rest. We're told to train hard, get to the gym, work every day, keep going, bang, bang, bang. You know what I mean? That's not helpful, that stuff. But I just think at the end of the day, being vulnerable all starts within yourself to create that safe space around you. Because in order to create a safe space, you've got to show that vulnerability yourself so that other people trust you. Trust is everything.
Trust is everything, and trusting that it's a safe space, trusting that you can confide in that person. You know, I'm always talking about how my wife, Shay, provided that space for me, and something I never had. Not only had I never seen before with my own eyes, but I never felt, more importantly. I've never felt that before. And ironically enough, I actually felt it 3 weeks into knowing her. So maybe another story for another day because I don't want to get too sidetracked. But I do want to move on to breaking the burden of masculinity. You know, I'm going to reference your TEDx talk quite often here today, man, because it's so powerful. I'm so excited for people to hear and watch it. But you said being a man's man might be one of the most dangerous things a man can be. You know, it's that toughen up, man up, like you said, don't, stop crying, stop being sensitive, right? All those, being a man's man is the wrong stigma. You know, it's incorrect, actually. Like, we need our feelings, we need our emotions, and more importantly, we need to understand and then articulate them if we need help, asking for help. Back to that. You quoted Michael Ian Black in saying, too many young boys are being trapped in an outdated model of masculinity, and that is toxic. Let's talk about that. Yeah,
again, it probably goes back to the way that our parents and their parents grew up and how they perceive the world. Very different, very different things happened back then. They're a very different generation. We can't expect to live in an old way here. An old system here doesn't work. And it's not going to work. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous in itself. And I think for us, in order to grow and to evolve with the change of times, like we don't still use the same computers that we used in the 70s, do we? So why are we still using the same conversations that don't work? This is how we've got to start looking at it. We've got to start looking at it objectively, subjectively, and literally, rather than just taking it for a grain of salt and saying this is how we should just do it. Is it a small portion of the world or every, you know what I mean?
So what would you say, I mean, the power of listening, how important is it now to you, going through what you went through with Dwayne? If anyone's out there, listening or watching, no pun intended with the listening, how important is the power of listening? What does that mean to you now, more than ever?
It's top priority after self-care. And the reason I say that is because I look back often and I think, and this is probably natural, man. I mean, what are some of the things I could have done differently that night? What are some of the things that I could have done or should have done that might have saved Dwayne's life, and that's the conversation that I've had with myself for many years. And I can't go back and change the past. I understand that, and that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but I understand that I can't change it. But what would I have done differently? And I looked at the situation objectively, and I thought, you know what? There was a lot of warning signs that night. There was a lot of stuff that Dwayne was probably putting out in the world that no one was picking up because they weren't equipped with the basic mental health tools. Even though I went through with my own struggles, I still couldn't see it, and I didn't want to accept it. So, as a layperson right now, I think listening is the most important thing you could possibly do, and it could be the difference between saving someone's life and maybe never seeing them again. And what I say about that is, we often look to problem solve, right? Like have the answers to everything because we think we're worthless if we don't add it up or we don't help someone. But you know what? That help for someone could be just listening. It's just an open ear without any judgment, without any repercussions, without any shame, none of that. Just listening from your side of the bed or your side of the street or your side of the room could be the difference in someone's life. 100%. And that is so important for people to understand.
Yeah.
You don't need to study medicine.
No.
You don't need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist to save someone's life.
Yeah.
You can do it as we're speaking right now on this podcast.
Yeah. And even just showing up for someone. Just showing up. Just being relied upon and delivering, being I can count on you to be there for me, right? I've said on here often, because I recently just learned it and I will implement it for life. If anyone comes to me and says, hey, Justin, I need you, right? For whatever. I now ask, the first response I give is, I'm here for you, but how do you need me to be here for you? Do you need me to listen with my ears? Do you need me to listen with my mind and give something back to you, advice, whatever, solutions? Or do you need me to show up with my heart? How do you need me to show up for you? Because in the past, I would just problem solve. I would try to fix everything. That's got me in trouble in a lot of areas in my life, including my marriage. My wife's like, I don't need you to fix everything. I just need you to be here. I need to know I can trust that, you can show me empathy right now. You can just be a little sensitive to my sensitivities. That's not a solution. That's just you just showing up, So ask the person, how do you need me to show up with my ears, my mind, or my heart?
Yeah, and I love that, man. And I love the fact that you give people options too. Because, for example, right, I'll run you through with just my own experiences right now.
Yeah.
When things are really overwhelming and you're given too many options, it adds to that overwhelm and it becomes no good.
Right.
None of those options now become real and viable options.
Yeah.
It becomes too much. And I think, for example, someone listening right now, if you're worried about someone who's struggling, is there anything that I can help you with? Putting questions out there. Can I walk your dog? Can I drive you to the store? Can I just a couple of options?
Sure.
Or would it make you feel more comfortable to seek professional help? Maybe someone's right there ready to get help,
right,
but they don't know how to make a call to a therapist. They don't know where to look. Justin, would it make you feel more comfortable right now if we maybe jump online together and do some searching and I can help you book it in? Would that make you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, exactly.
These are the things that really get people thinking from, I want to do something, to actually taking action in their life.
Yeah.
And they're the little parts of this journey where I think we really need to show up for our friends and people in our life that we actually care and value for.
Yeah.
Because we expect that everyone's armed with the same knowledge that we're armed with, and that's not the case. Because a problem to you right now might not be anything to me, but a small problem to you might mean the world to me.
Yeah.
And that's because we're all very different human beings.
Yeah.
So after everything is done and everything is said and done, what I always say is, if you're ever in doubt, just reach out. Being honest, you can't go wrong. If you're honest about someone, for example, if your friend's struggling and you've noticed that they're struggling and they're not themselves, Justin, man, I'm just going to be brutally honest with you as a friend. I know that you really haven't been yourself. I'm not asking you to answer me right now.
Right.
But I just want you to know, whenever you're ready, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
However that looks.
Yeah. And that's love. That's the best intention, and I'm sure that can be received sometimes incorrectly from the person you're trying to reach out to. And also to add to, you said, everyone has different problems and different, they prioritize their problems differently. They also have different solutions. What's a solution for me for something may not be a solution for you, right? So it's, again, just understanding, how do you need me to show up, but stay consistent with trying to show up for people.
Keywords, consistent. I love that.
Yeah. I want to also highlight right now, more to what you're doing for all of this, with mental health and suicide prevention. We talked about LIVIN, but I want to talk about your podcast, It Ain't Weak to Speak, as you say, breaking the stigma of mental health. Let's talk about that. So obviously LIVIN came about from Dwayne. Was It Ain't Weak to Speak kind of just another layer to that? Or?
Yeah, so It Ain't Weak to Speak was our little mantra off the back of LIVIN, because we often asked ourselves, people don't ask for help because they think it's weak. And one of the boys came up with this really cool mantra, It Ain't Weak to Speak. So it just sort of stuck.
Yeah.
Anyway, everything that we do at LIVIN is around breaking that stigma around mental health. And we have three core pillars with what we do. Education across schools and workplaces. We do merch. So across our merch is actually, there's an impact saying how many conversations our T-shirts or our hoodies are making, which is life-changing for some people.
Beautiful.
And then community. And the importance of that hashtag it ain't weak to speak can start so many amazing conversations.
Oh, yeah.
And mate, it's pretty surreal over the years, the amount of conversations that's saved and had with people in their life, in their journey. And LIVIN's just one organization out of so many great organizations, and LIVIN wouldn't be where it is today without the support. And you know, and it's not ideal, obviously, but there are people taking their lives right now, and we're just trying to do our very best to stop people from doing that, so that they can get the help that they deserve. You
just led me beautifully into that. You gave me the stat of every 60 seconds someone takes their life. Every minute of every day, someone is committing suicide. Someone is taking their life. And also, you mentioned 4 times as many men than women are committing suicide. Let's talk about that a little bit, and as to maybe why that might. I mean, 4 times is a heavy number. Why do you think that is,
mate? And again, this all segues back into this conversation. It's all around it ain't weak to speak. Men especially have a hard time asking for help. They have a hard time asking for help. And you could, it's, again, it comes back to the societal, the self-stigma, the perceived stigmas, all these things that surround mental health.
Right.
And it's still new. Like this conversation's, we're only starting to see a shift in the dial just recently, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And men in particular are still sucking it up. They're still living in the past, the old ways of masculinity, and it isn't helpful, and it's not helpful, and it never will be helpful, because you've got to deal with your emotions some way. And if you don't deal with them the right way, they come out the wrong way. And when they come out the wrong way, it comes across things like we spoke about: self-sabotage, drug addiction, alcohol abuse, all these things, anger, frustration. It's not helpful. So take the step to have those conversations, and then that's a whole different conversation. Like a lot of people like, Sam, but it ain't weak to speak. But how do you actually ask for help? How do you have that conversation?
Right.
That's a whole different conversation, because there are ways to have those conversations. There are ways to come out for the very first time and to be able to be vulnerable. But again, you're probably not going to be vulnerable with someone that the space isn't safe.
Well, let's dive into that, right? What would be some of the conversational pieces, if we can give to people, if they're saying, you know what, okay, Sam, Justin, I appreciate what you're saying, and maybe this was meant for me to hear. Maybe it's time for me to open up. Maybe it's time for me to speak, right? Like, what are some of the tools we can give them to help in that? Because I wholeheartedly believe in this saying, and I've said it before: just because you have to ask for help, it doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't mean you're a loser. Doesn't mean you're weak. Doesn't mean you're stupid. Doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that you're not alone. Look at the people around you who love you, who want the best, who wish the best, who would give you anything you need to become the best. Utilize those resources. Just because you have to ask for help doesn't mean you failed. It means you're not alone. So for someone who is wanting to speak, what would be some of the conversation starters that someone could have?
And it's a great question. It's a really good question. And if people want more in-depth stuff, I have an episode on the podcast that I did do on this specifically.
Great.
But to wind it up a little bit, right? To wind back a little bit, there are a lot of people out there that they might be the alpha males in the group, right?
Yep.
And in their group, they're perceived on their high horse. They think they're better than, in a way, or they're not the guys that want to be asking for help because they're seen as the alpha males or the people with all the answers all the time. So for them to then have to go from there to then asking for help is almost like depending on the person or the people, it's like a change in their identity. They feel like it's an ego shift. It's a shift on this pedestal where they've put themselves. So they're putting almost this pressure on themselves that doesn't need to be there. But as far as asking for help goes, it'll be the best thing that you ever do. Is agree. What I'm going to put out there straight away. It will be the best thing that you ever do.
I agree.
And you won't
regret it.
You'll never regret it, ever. But asking for help takes time. If you're ready to ask for help today and you go and speak to a friend, just be honest. I think being honest and being open as best as you can, without any self-judgment, without any self-sabotaging effects of, I didn't say it right, or I sound like I'm crazy, or I must sound like I'm unfixable. Don't be kinder to yourself. First and foremost, give yourself the same compassion that you would give to your friend. I always tell people that if you're struggling, having a hard time with yourself, treat yourself like a friend. Now, the next part of this is really important, right? I went and bought myself a new pair of shoes a couple of days ago. Really nice new pair of Adidas. Adidas.
That's like
Adidas. Adidas. Anyway, long story short, it took me a while to get the right fit, right? I wouldn't buy these if they were a 9 because I'm a 10. Not the right fit. Same thing with seeking mental health support. If you go and see someone for the very first time and you go, I felt like I unloaded everything on them because my friend said, go see a psychologist. We ended up getting there. It took me 6 months, but I had a really bad experience. And I'm never doing that again. They felt like they didn't even listen. They didn't even get me. They made my problems worse.
This isn't for me.
I'm never doing it again. What I'm saying to you guys is please be patient to find the right fit. My connection with the shoe is don't do something that doesn't fit with you. It's like any relationship with a loved one, a romantic relationship. Find the right fit, because there are people out there that will connect with you and will help you get back on track to start living again.
That's beautiful.
I hope that answered that. That's only very vague. There's a lot more other things, but
it was good, and I'll make sure I make sure, guys, the episode that Sam referred to, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. You guys can click the link. You can watch it. You can listen to it. I also wanted to add, if I may, to you said just be honest, just show up honest. If I can add to that, when you show up honest, because I agree, truthful to yourself, more importantly. Also, do not ego protect. As men, we ego protect all the time. I can't be seen as weak. I can't be seen as I don't know the answer. You know, I can't be seen as this is new to me. This is foreign territory. I can't be looking like an idiot. Stop ego protecting. That is ego protecting at its finest. It's so important that we as men let our ego to the side. If everyone follows me on Instagram, you guys know how obsessed I am with Sade, the artist Sade. One of my favorite songs is Sade. The title says it all. It says, love is stronger than pride. I know you're big on love. Everyone knows my wife, who I call Love, is huge on love. Love is stronger than pride. When you show up to someone seeking for help, that's the first step of self-love for yourself. That is you saying, I need help. You know, I am going through this.
Exactly.
I know this is going to get me closer to loving myself, which in turn will get me closer to allowing someone to love me.
I love that.
Allowing me to give love. So let's talk about how important, you said self-care is number one care. And if I can add to that, Sam, and I'll let you get into that, is self-love is not selfish. It's important.
And I just want to just touch on something really quickly, because I think it's really important. Be proud of where you've been and what you've done in your life. I think we've all got to start showing forgiveness, but also being prouder of what we've achieved in our life. And don't put so much pressure on you to have the answers today, because you know, I'm still searching for answers, and I'm 32 years of age, and I'll never have answers to certain things in my life. And you know what? That's just life. And if the moment you release that pressure of, I'm never going to have the answers to everything, and I'm not going to problem solve everything, you're automatically releasing that pressure valve. So therefore, that seeking help might become a little bit easier for you. And on the seeking help thing, I left out, which is really important, mate. So sorry to go off that.
Please, no, go ahead.
If you feel like that you're putting signs out in the world where you've almost got like a sticker on your head that says "Help me," and you've got best friends that are around you all the time they're not asking you, are you all right, and you seem off. I want to make this clear. It's not because they don't care about you, and it's not because they don't want you to get the help that you're probably desperately wanting. But they just don't see it. They're not picking up on it because you're hiding it in some way, or you're not showing it. Your feeling to them is very different. People are not mind readers. So please have those honest conversations is what I wanted to finish up on.
That's so important. I'm glad you said that.
On that regard. But that falls into self-care. Segues into that perfectly. And what I mean by that is, I learned the hard way, right? I knew the advice that I wasn't given Dwayne, and some of the people in my life, throughout my life, has never probably been the best advice. And I often reflect on it and ask myself why. And it was because I wasn't actually doing too good myself. So how am I supposed to give someone the right answers if I'm not even giving myself the right answers?
Right.
You know, like it just doesn't work. Like, you've got to be able to pour from a cup that's full. Yes. You've got to be able to give people what you're able to give. Otherwise, you're not giving them the real, true version of who you are as a human.
Yeah.
So my whole idea around self-care went from that's selfish to it's actually selfish if I'm not doing that, which is insane because I'm now looking after myself, and if training and exercise and reading isn't at the top of my to-do list, I don't have a to-do list. That's just the way my life is right now. Yeah. And yes, I'm never always in a balance, and there are times where I struggle and I wish I could do more at times. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. I'm grateful where I'm at in my journey, and I'm proud of myself. Oftentimes I probably could be more kinder, but it's important to practice what you preach. Yeah. Self-care for you might be very different than Justin and I.
Sure.
I exercise, I read, I trying to get back into doing journaling. I want to try and meditate, although that's been a struggle for me. Yeah. You might want to paint and whatever.
Sure.
I always say self-care comes down to what you enjoy. Don't do it because Justin and I said you got to go run 5K a day or 5 miles. Yeah. Do it because you want to do it, and it actually makes you feel good about yourself, and you enjoy it. It gives you a smile. That is what true self-care is. Self-care is the most important part of the journey. Yeah. Without that, you're always gonna fall behind.
I love that you said that. You basically broke down in a more simplified way to understand what my therapist gave me one time, which is one of the most complicated things I've ever heard. And I was like, that's the biggest play on words. I'm like, dude, I'm confused right now. And he said, people who are selfless are actually selfish. I was like, did you mean, wait, can you unpack that a little bit? What are you talking about? He's like, people can be so selfless, right? That they become selfish in this way, like you just explained, because selfishly, they're saying, I'm going to be selfless instead of taking care of myself. You just explained that in a way that now that what my therapist gave me makes even more sense. And so I'm so glad you said that, because again, it's for everyone out there. A lot of times people who are super selfless is because they don't want to face the uncomfortableness that they're sitting with. They don't want to face the inevitable of, I know I need things to change. I'm just going to help out everyone else first though. And that helping everyone out first is for like a month, and then a year, and then 10 years, and then your whole life, without sitting down and saying, but what do I need help with? And then asking those people you kept being helpful for and selflessly helping them, now you can go to them and say, hey, my turn.
Yeah.
It's not selfish. It's important. It's necessary.
Focus on yourself more and get yourself to a point where you're truly happy with it.
Yeah.
And it will be probably be a work in progress for the rest of your life.
Sure. Well, again, it's foreign territory for a lot of people, because people, I think that the natural stigma for self-love and self-care is selfishness. You know, it's hard for people to say no to other people. And Shay, my wife, is you know, a very selfless person, and we're, you know, trying to figure out ways to, so for example, we're down to one car right now. And so Shay was driving me to work. But before that, I went to Uber to see how much it was. It was a lot of money. She's like, it's fine, I'll just take you. So we're in the car and there's a little bit of traffic. And she's like, I probably should have just stayed home. I should have just had you Uber because I need to work and stuff. And so now I feel bad for accepting the offer that she gave me to drive. And we're going like back and forth. And it reminded me of something that I've been trying to help her with. Don't say yes to me if it means saying no to you. Don't say yes to someone if it means saying no to yourself. Make sure you're selfish with what you need.
I like that.
Your self-love, right? The other final takeaway I want to add here too, you said something earlier about how it's kind of like foreign, you know, for men to be vulnerable. And in a way, I don't mean to butcher what you said, but it made me think about this. When your girlfriend, when Nadia talked about you, and then I went home and I did some research, and I was looking at everything, and I remember thinking, like, I hate that it feels weird that seeing another man be vulnerable is like rare nowadays. I'm like such an advocate of normalizing vulnerability. And I was like, why do I feel like Sam's like some unicorn out here? He's just a man being vulnerable, because there's not enough of men being vulnerable. And so for what you do in making it ain't weak to speak, normalizing vulnerability is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make men because men are, it's all about how many, I want to have a girlfriend, I want to have a relationship, I want to have a partnership, and attracting the, people coming in your life. But vulnerability is actually sexy. Like I'm trying to deliver that to men. Like if you guys take anything for this, like I don't want to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is sexy, man. Oh, okay. I'll listen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's cool.
So yeah, but back to what I said was, I just remember thinking like, I can't wait for the day when I find out there's another man out here doing what I'm trying to do, that I don't feel like it's not normal. I can't wait to normalize vulnerability. I can't wait till there's more people like you and I, men, who are able to be vulnerable and are able to have conversations like this without being uncomfortable, without worrying about a fear of judgment or a fear of coming off as weak, right? I can't wait for that day. So that's one of my final takeaways. And also too, on a very serious note, if anyone is listening or watching to what we were talking about here today, and of a friend maybe that you're like, I haven't really heard from them in a while, I wonder how they're doing, or man, he or she kind of gave me some signs there of like things aren't really going that well, and I forgot to check in, I forgot to text them back or call them back. Please do. Please call them back. Please text them back. Please reach out, and don't accept when you do reach out, I'm fine. Everything's cool. It's all good. I'm good. We're not going to accept that anymore, because I know how powerful I'm sure that is in your life. Not accepting I'm fine, and again, also just showing up for understand how your person that you're reaching out to, understand how they need you to show up. Guys, as men specifically, we have to stop problem solving. We have to stop thinking, there's an issue, here's the solution, done. Like there's so much more that we can offer besides that, but it comes to understanding what that person needs, being aware of it, and being sensitive to it sometimes, being accepting of it.
And your mental health is most important. I think
yeah.
Mental health first, and then the rest of your body sort of comes in sync, and so does your relationships and life, I feel.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I've learned wholeheartedly over the years is whenever I'm mentally adept and I'm doing well mentally, I think the rest of my life sort of falls into place really nicely.
Yeah.
And it's important to prioritize your mental health, and it might not look cool or sound cool to you, or it might be something that's not talking about, or spoken about in the family home or during your friendship circles. But I could almost assure you that if you start having those honest, hard-hitting conversations, and you be the first unicorn in your group, so to speak, you'll start gathering people in your circle, and 100%. They'll start saying, oh, well, I'm so glad you did that, because now, I've been feeling like that for years, but I didn't know who to talk to, but now I know that you do. You'll end up inadvertently becoming a leader in your own right. So I challenge each and every one of you guys to take something away from this podcast to help yourself first and foremost, but maybe someone in your life that you think might be struggling. Because I can tell you right now, with my hand on my heart, there is help and support out there for all of us, and we can all get back on the right track to living a really, really nice, happy life again.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's beautiful, and I'm hoping everyone takes that away. So I want to get into I call this the round of rapid fire questions. Something that you have no idea what's coming your way.
No idea at all.
I do this.
I like this. I like surprises.
On purpose. I want everyone's raw reaction, and the overall premise too is to really get people to understand that everyone's idea of success, happiness, love, whatever it may be, could be different, right? So here you go. Question number 1 is, if you could do anything knowing you wouldn't fail, what would you do?
Fly.
That's quick. I love it. Okay.
Is that a good answer?
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I want to fly.
I was like, no one's ever answered that quick. Everyone's like, so that's beautiful. Question number 2. Well, I know this answer, but what's one experience that you've had that's changed your life? Obviously, Dwayne's experience changed your life. Maybe you can add if there's another experience. Take your time.
I think that experience for me is, I don't know that I'd put it down to another experience. I think it was just experiences. I think there's a range of experiences right now. Like the people I meet, I feel like everyone who's come in and out of my life, or I've met at some stage of my life, have had some sort of impact in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's helped shape me into the person that I am today.
Sure.
And I'm very grateful for that. I don't have a defining moment. Was obviously Livin's passing, Dwayne's passing, and Livin starting.
Yeah.
Obviously my own challenges prior to that. But it was Dwayne's death that really saved my life.
Sure.
It was really Dwayne's passing that saved my life and helped me unlock my true life underneath that garbage, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow. I figured that would be your answer, but you unpacked a little bit more, which is going to help a lot of people. Great answer. Question number 3. What's one motto or mantra you live by?
If in doubt, reach out. Definitely.
Yeah. When in doubt, reach out.
Yeah. Or when in doubt, reach out. If in doubt, reach out. Or obviously it ain't weak to speak. And that doesn't necessarily mean for mental health, guys. I mean,
sure.
That is tagged on LIVIN.
Yeah.
But it ain't weak to speak could be anything. For example, if you've got a girl in your life that you really, really like, but you're scared to ask her if she feels the same way, just ask. Because if you don't ask, you'll never know.
You'll regret it.
Same as a job promotion. Same as it might be a lead to get to somewhere in your life that you really, really need. Don't be scared to have any conversation, because if you don't ask, people might never know that that's what you wanted. And some people can do things quite easily. And you'll be surprised half the time. It ain't weak to speak, and if in doubt, reach out.
Love it. Question number 4. What do you want to be known for when you leave this earth? Think legacy.
Yeah, I guess I want LIVIN to outlive me. I want LIVIN to be something that is synonymous with mental health and reaching out for support when things get really dark and lonely. And I just want to be remembered for doing the right thing, being honest, being transparent, and just always wearing my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And being a good role model to my family.
Sure. Well, you definitely are, for sure, already. Last and final question for you. What does Sam admire most about Sam?
That's a great question.
Self-love.
It is self-love, and it's as I said earlier, sometimes I have a hard time with this. But for me, I admire my work ethic. If I set my mind on something, man, I'll do it. And I'm obsessive in that regard.
Me too.
It's a double-edged sword. It's great sometimes, but then it can be really hard sometimes. That and my energy and compassion towards people.
That's powerful, man.
I gave you 3 there. That was
that's great.
That's self-love, isn't it?
Hey, come on now.
That's
you could have kept going.
Daily affirmations. But then there are a lot of things that I struggle with. But we all struggle with things.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. This is the time of the show where I always acknowledge my guest. Take the time to. I know you just said your self-love, but even more, and this is like words of affirmation for sure. I got emotional today driving to the show. Listening to the episode you did with Daniel Price and a friend of yours who attempted, suicide, and it just made me think about, he portrayed this quote unquote like perfect life. He had a really expensive sports car. For a lot of men, that's the goal. Made a lot of money. Was married. Like everything was good, right? Everything was fine, but it really wasn't. And it made me emotional, because I just think how lucky and blessed and grateful I am to have control over my mental health, in the sense of like, I'm a very happy person, glass half full, optimistic person. But I know that's not the same for a lot of people. And it broke my heart to think that, there's a lot of people out there suffering mentally and suffering internally. And, I swear on everything I love, I will do everything in my power to help in any kind of way, and that is something that you're doing already. And you're a living, breathing, just soaking it all in person who's just wanting to give back, to make sure there's no more Dwaynes. I acknowledge and admire the hell out of you for that, man. That's powerful. You're 32 years old and you're moving like this. That's so powerful, man. I mean, it's beautiful to see. I just admire you as a man and acknowledge you as just being a man who's comfortable being vulnerable. You know, it's like, it's easy for us, I think, to do that, but it's hard for a lot of men. And even though it's easy for us, it may be hard to talk about it. You know, it's internal. Maybe it's within our household, with your girl, with your family, whoever it is. But we're on a public stage here, albeit with our platforms, and we're normalizing it. And that's powerful. So I acknowledge you for that. Last but not least, just acknowledging you for wanting to do your part while you're here. You know, there's a lot of people out there who have lost people to suicide. And maybe they wanted to do something on behalf of the person they lost, their life, their legacy, right? And maybe they didn't do it for whatever reason. And here you are doing that, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring anyone who has thought about it to continue to do it as well. So just love what you do, man. I'm such a fan. And this was an honor, a pleasure, a privilege. I want everyone to know where to find you, how to reach out to you. I will include all this in the show notes. So just this is your time to let people know how they can find out more. Just be in touch.
Mate, firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. Love your work, love what you're trying to achieve, and I think every voice out there, ours included, is worth speaking up and talking about what we believe in. And mate, I think what you're up to and your long-term vision is it's a really special journey that you're on, man. And I I'm going to be sitting from the sideline watching it grow. And if I can help in any way, shape or form, definitely don't hesitate to ask me.
Thank you.
Student of life, man, and I'm always learning. I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
And I appreciate being on the show. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the kind words about living and listening and asking some great questions. Yeah. And people, if you want to get involved or help support the charity or follow the mission, you guys can follow LIVIN.org, LIVIN.org, and that's livin.org, and that's the domain, livin.org, or the socials is just livin.org.
Okay.
And then you can follow me, and I can point you there from my pages, which is just Sam Webb, SAMWEBB, Sam Webb.
Love it. Yeah, I'll make sure I include all this, including that episode about conversation starters and asking for help, and everyone for sure will have all the resources. So appreciate you having, thanks for coming out. I was going to say, appreciate you also for having me on. We filmed your episode a little bit earlier. I'll add that to the show notes as well. And again, just for what you do, man, it's an honor. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. I'm fine. These are two very simple words that we say every day without actually thinking about what they mean. But what if I told you they were two of the most dangerous words used by people every day to hide unbearable pain? I'm fine with the last two words that I heard from my good friend Dwayne the night that he took his own life. The ripple effect that Dwayne's suicide had on an entire community was life-changing for me. And I realised that for a lot of people, the mantra, I'm fine, masks insurmountable pain. For men, more so. We're socialised to think it's weak to show vulnerability. We're told to suck it up and to get over it. Many men struggle with this burden that accompanies masculinity, but rarely know how to speak about it, which makes it very, very dangerous. Dwayne was the poster boy for masculinity. He was strong, he was courageous, he was tough, he was dominant. He just liked appearing weak. In fact, Dwayne would hide his vulnerabilities at every cost. Ultimately, his own life. From the outside looking in, Dwayne had it all. But he perfected the art of smiling depression while hiding what he was truly going through beneath the surface. And because of this facade, no one on the outside had the opportunity to intervene. I remember very clearly speaking with Dwayne the night that he took his own life, and the last thing that he said to me was, I'm fine, with a great big smile on his face. I'll never forget that moment. He reassured me life was great, and from that moment onwards, it was promising and bright.
That was the last time that I saw Dwayne in living form. And in hindsight, the warning signs were evident that night. But I didn't have the foresight to see them because I wasn't man enough to be vulnerable myself. Perhaps, if I'd opened up and listened properly myself, maybe I could have disarmed Dwayne about how he was feeling. And maybe the outcome could have been different. You see, being comfortable with vulnerability gives power to others to be vulnerable too. It creates a connection, a kind of trust that's felt instantly, which allows someone else to be able to open up and share with you on a deeper level. So when someone asks, how are you doing? Of course you're not going to be open, honest and vulnerable if you don't feel comfortable. Why would you if you don't feel heard or if you don't feel safe? A perfect example. In 2016, I was very lucky to have been cast in Australian Survivor. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I had no idea either. Now, a long story short, I was thrown on an island deep in the Samoan jungle. And I soon realised what the game was about. A lot of manipulation, a lot of deception, a lot of lies. And so I naturally started to hide how I was really feeling. I had a hard time trusting people. I feared for my safety in the game. So I started to recluse. I could never be open and never be honest and fully transparent because I wasn't comfortable and I wasn't safe. You see, that was just a game. People feel this way every single day of their lives while I'm standing here. It's becoming increasingly evident that being a man's man might just be the most dangerous thing that a man can be. Michael Ian Black, a regular writer for the New York Times, says that too many young boys are being trapped in an outdated model of masculinity, and it is toxic. So without us properly understanding the impacts of toxic masculinity on mental health, we cannot begin to have these important and potentially life-saving conversations with those people in our lives who are struggling. I don't take I'm fine for an answer anymore. Dwayne's death was a wake-up moment for me. And it was there that I realised that the conversation needed to change. I'm an ex-finance guy turned actor and social entrepreneur for mental health. Dwayne's suicide death inspired me to co-found the mental health charity in Australia called LIVIN, which we've recently just brought to the States so that we can help more people and break the stigmas around mental health. You know, I'm not a mental health professional by any means. I'm just a student of life. I've experienced firsthand the devastating impacts that suicide has had on an entire community, which completely derailed me. And it derails a lot of people. And this story isn't too dissimilar to what I hear on a daily basis. So instead of having the small talk and dancing around the conversations, we need to start changing the conversations that we're having. Because according to Mental Health America, 4 times as many men than women are dying by their own 2 hands every single year. And when it comes to seeking help for a mental health problem, men are less likely to speak up and seek help because of social stigmas. This has to change. We need to change the narrative around male masculinity. Speaking about it is the first step because it ain't weak to speak. If we have enough of the right conversations here early on, we can potentially eliminate many of the conversations that are happening down here before it is too late. We need to make a societal change so that when all of our times are up, our children's children can live free of the burden that accompanies masculinity. Tim Winton, who has written volumes on his observations of the cultures of men and boys in Australia, argues that misogyny, like racism, is one of the greatest engines of intergenerational trauma. And for a lot of people, and like Dwayne, the pain and the burden can outweigh their will to live. And so departing this life seems their only option. I'll provide you with the 5 keys to LIVIN that anyone can take so that they can have a conversation with someone in their life who might be struggling in silence as a strategy for preventing suicide. Number 1, we need to start the dialogue earlier. We're not talking to our boys. We're not teaching them emotions and feelings. We're still talking about materialism and everything that's on the surface. We aren't diving deep enough. And if we eventually do, it's too little and it's too late. We need to start having conversations around emotions, vulnerability at a young age, so it's etched into someone's mind as they grow up and develop. Ask your son how they're doing at a certain challenge at school. Use safe language. Be open. Show vulnerability. It gives them power to be open as well. We need to be better understanding and managing our young people's emotions without forgetting how they really feel. Number 2 is we need to change the language to the dialogue altogether. Instead of saying things like, harden up, or why don't you just get over it, or man up. A classic that I hear often is, why don't you just snap out of it? Why don't you just snap out of it? Because I didn't already think of that. These are all very unhelpful, and they're not going to make someone feel open and comfortable to be able to share with you on a deeper level. So we really need to change that. We need to change a young person's mind as they develop and as they grow up. Number 3, the third key, is we need to have the conversations with the right people. Far too often we're caught in the wrong circles, speaking with the wrong people that don't make us feel heard, and they don't make us feel safe. They don't make us feel comfortable. We need to find the places and the people that make us feel nurtured and feel comfortable so that we can take that leap and take that vulnerability step to open up. And we all have the power to do that. So as people and as individuals, we need to be safe first and foremost so that someone else can feel safe with us as well. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you. How are you going to become the safest person to speak to so that someone else can open up and connect with you on a deeper level? Key number 4. We need to have the conversations outside of ourselves. We spend far too long in our own heads speaking to ourselves than we speak to anybody else. Remember, it ain't weak to speak. Speaking up and seeking help is a sign of strength, not a weakness. Now, I want to say this. If someone does take that leap and does open up to you on a deeper level, sometimes the most important thing that you can do is listen. Listening could be the difference between potentially saving someone's life and never seeing them again. My 5th and final key is listening. I look back on the night that Dwayne took his own life and I ask myself this. Was I listening? Was I listening on a deeper level to what Dwayne was saying? Probably not. Why? Because I wasn't giving myself the option to be vulnerable myself. I'll never forget that. I can't go back in time and rewrite that part of my life. But what I can do is I can teach every single person through the mistakes that I've made. Macho Man Sam kicked in that night and started to give advice, started to problem solve. And I missed the very thing that Dwayne was seeking, and that was just to be heard. Some of the best advice that I have received in my life thus far, it was from a friend of mine who is also a psychologist. He said, Sam, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak, because oftentimes when you do, people will tell you what they want. I've never forgotten that advice, and it served me very well in my life today. We need to start listening to people's hearts. So how are you going to change the dialogue? How does that change the next conversation that you have with your spouse, your son, or your loved one? Don't take "I'm fine" for a feeling anymore, because it's no longer an acceptable answer to a question. We need to be diving deeper. We need to break the burden of masculinity. Being rich enough, having the best job, being the sole provider, or carrying the entire weight of your family on your back is not the solution. We need to start sharing our emotions. We need to start helping people live. We need to pick people up when they're falling. We need to listen instead of trying to solve all the problems. And we need to become the safest people possible so that when someone needs us most, we're there. So all that stuff that you've been carrying on your back for so long, get rid of it. Shed it. Throw it all away. To ensure that our fathers, our brothers, our sons, and our friends stop dying prematurely, we need to deeply rethink what being a man is all about. It is time to reframe the dialogue. A man speaks his emotions. A man is allowed to be vulnerable and ask for help. A man does not judge another man, and a man is what's going to save lives and break this cycle for the generations to come. So instead of saying "I'm fine," it's time to start living. Because at the end of the day, it ain't weak to speak. Thank you.